What's up, folks? Welcome to another episode of the 10 Horse Money YouTube channel. And we often hear about the THERMOCLINE. It's something that sets up in the summer, but what exactly is the THERMOCLINE? There's a THERMOCLINE on this lake. We're going to go out there and have a look at it and talk about how the fish relate to the THERMOCLINE, where you should fish in relation to the THERMOCLINE, and you know, that kind of stuff. So here we go. All right, here's a great depiction of the THERMOCLINE. The THERMOCLINE's set up pretty hard in this lake. It's still pretty deep. You know, we're down there about 25 feet of water, but you can see all this clutter. This is all just scattered bait fish and stuff hanging out above the THERMOCLINE. So, 25 feet or less. It's a lot of water. The THERMOCLINE is a band of water that is depleted of oxygen. Now, it's going to vary from lake to lake. Typically, the deeper the lake, the deeper the THERMOCLINE, but the clarity of the water always comes into play as well. So if you've got a really deep lake, but the sun can only penetrate 4 feet because it's really staying, your THERMOCLINE is going to be a lot shallower than if you've got a lake, say Bull Shoals or Table Rock, that's really clear. Say it has 20 feet of visibility. Your THERMOCLINE is going to be 30 or 40 feet, quite a bit deeper. It's really distinguishable. It's this real thick band of clutter that you'll see on your electronics. The fish will stay above or in the THERMOCLINE because it has a lack of oxygen. Most fish that we fish for, crappie, bass, bluegill, things like that, they cannot tolerate the lower oxygen levels below the THERMOCLINE. Now, some of your rougher fish like gar and carp and maybe even catfish, they can kind of tolerate that lower oxygen level. They're a little tougher than the game fish. Another thing about the THERMOCLINE is it's cooler. The water's a little bit cooler. So a lot of times those fish will be right there on it or relating to it heavy because that's the coolest water that still has enough oxygen in it that they can feel comfortable being in. Targeting fish relating to the THERMOCLINE usually means finding some cover that's right at the same depth as the THERMOCLINE or a few feet above it. Whether that be on points, the bottom. Just had a fish jump over there. Oh, actually it's a hawk. Look at that. That's crazy. You got a fish or a frog or something. Wow. Jungle out here, folks. Just sitting here doing this commentary and boom, I heard something splash behind me. I thought it was a fish and there's a hawk. I actually saw that hawk on the other side of the lake a while ago. Craziness. So you're looking for that THERMOCLINE, and that's going to eliminate a lot of the water. Say if you're fishing a lake that's the max depth is 40 feet, but you got a THERMOCLINE in 15. Anything below 15, you don't have to mess with. So you're going to look for stuff that's 12 to 15, 10 to 15, something like that. Brush piles, stumps, rock piles, grass edges. It cuts down a lot of the guesswork. The THERMOCLINE kind of becomes the bottom of the lake. So when you're fishing offshore or deeper, you just kind of idle around looking for stuff that is right at or above the THERMOCLINE and just target that stuff with your typical summer baits. And that THERMOCLINE is something that happens in the summertime. You're not going to find it any other time of the year. The surface temperatures warm, they become hotter than the temperatures at the lower depths, and they kind of stratify. In the fall, you'll get colder air coming in. It will cool that surface temperature. When that surface temperature reaches the same temperature as the temperature of the water below the THERMOCLINE, actually just a little bit colder, you get what you call the fall turnover, because cold water is more dense and more heavy than warm water. So when that upper level becomes heavier than the lower level, it pushes down and it causes the turnover. The water just kind of flops and it takes a couple days to stabilize. You can typically notice that's happening. You'll see a lot of like nasty bubbles. You'll see a lot of leaves and debris floating in areas, and it messes up the fishing for a couple days until it kind of gets mixed up properly. The THERMOCLINE is going to vary day to day. if you get a lot of wind for a couple days, it will bust up that thermocline. It kind of oxygenates the whole lake when it gets stirred up by wind. If you have heavy rain, same thing. That rain is causing some current, and it's going to actually oxygenate the water, so you're going to get a little bit of, making me nervous now with that hawk behind me. That rain's going to mix things up, and your thermocline is going to kind of bust up a little bit. In different parts of the lake, the thermocline is going to be different. It may be a lot deeper out in the main lake, but you get back in some of the creeks and it could be 10 degrees shallower. So you always got to keep an eye on that, and it's very easy to distinguish on your graph. Here's a good example right here of the thermocline sitting up or idling through this creek. See it right here. This is your thermocline, this band. So it's down there about 25 feet. I see a little bit of scattered bait. We'll get out here in the main lake and we'll look, see what it looks like. All right, here we go. You can really see the thermocline. Boat's in about 30 feet of water. This water temp's 93.7 degrees. The 25 feet is where that thermocline is starting. You can see this bait kind of hanging out all along the top of the thermocline. There's not a lot down below it. As far as what to fish, we'll kind of ease up on this point a little bit. It's starting to come up. You can see the bait, crappie right there, kind of hanging on that point. But you would want to fish something like this. You know, it's right here in 14. Let's move this around a little bit. The grab is hot. Okay, so here's your thermocline right here. Anything that's relating to this thermocline right above it, see these fish are kind of wanting to be right here. So if you've got something that's 15 to 20 feet, that's going to be perfect. I mean, this is a little bit higher. This is up there in about 12 or 13. So you're seeing your thermocline. Anything that's close to that depth is going to be a good spot to check when you're out here idling. Now, if you're having problems finding a thermocline, you suspect there's a thermocline, you know, it's usually when the water's like in the mid-80s is when it starts happening. July, August, September, that's your prime thermocline time frame. You can really beef up your sensitivity on your graph to find that thermocline. I've got this on, I'm going to put this on 2D and I'll show you here, make sure I don't run into anybody. So we've got this on standard 2D, and you're going to see it the same way on 2D. You see this clutter starting to happen up right here? That's your thermocline. If we turn down the sensitivity, let's take this off of auto. Let's turn down the sensitivity. See, your thermocline goes away. You can't see it at all. Turn the sensitivity down, -9. But as you bump the sensitivity back up, your thermocline is going to start to show up. See it? Boom. And you really want it to pop. There's your thermocline. It's down there around 26, 27 feet. That's all thermocline. And you can see these fish. These are all fish right here. They're right in the thermocline, but they're not down in it. They're kind of just hanging around. And let's take a look at it on side scan. Yeah, you can see right here. Zoom this in. There's your thermocline right there. There's a fish kind of streaking up through it. That's your thermocline.